Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Derick Johnson here on our podcast as a guest here. You guys are going to hear his amazing story. He has a really unique background in being in the military, and now he's a fitness guy that's going to help people even not only in getting shredded, but also help people in their whole life. And there's some really cool stories and testimonies he's going to share. And then we'll talk about some tactics around how he's built his brand, how he's helped serve people, and we'll talk about some habits and principles toward the end. So stay tuned toward that. Before we dive into the podcast here with Derick, I want to give everybody that's listening in a free gift. Down below in the show notes, there's a free workshop that I created that would really help you be able to grow and scale your online business. So if you wanted to get to 6 and 7 figures and you're trying to figure out how to incorporate ads and AI, I'll watch that training video. It's going to just be a really helpful resource for you. Derick, as we dive into it, I want to ask you a question I ask everybody, but what is high performance? Like, what does that look like to you? How does that apply to your life?
Great question, Nathan. I appreciate you having me. So, high performance, definitely living out our potential and leading by example. So, with my guys that I used to serve with in the Army, we'd always say, you're either a walking billboard or a walking contradiction. Which one do we want to be? So, high performance, we just aim to lead and to live what we're speaking about and just to be authentic. If we're struggling, we communicate that. If we're doing well, we teach them how we're doing that, and just full authenticity and transparency and performing high, but also building those others on your team or in your family up.
That's good, man. That's good. I mean, I love the context of being in the military too. Like, you have a military background, you're a fitness guy, you're have a life coach stuff. Like, talk to us about a little bit more about like how you serve people even more.
Great question. So I specialize in helping people break old patterns to take them from just surviving to thriving. So if they feel like in their fitness journey, they always diet hop, or in their dating life, if they feel like they're dating the same person with a different face and they have a similar outcome, what is that pattern? Or if it's career, they crush it in sales, but their personal life is lacking. So we pinpoint, where do they feel like they hit a wall at? Or is there a mental box? Or last but not least is, are they carrying around a lot of baggage and trauma from their past, and it's affecting and infecting every other area of their life, and they try to suppress and mask it? So I really love unpacking that with people, but teaching them how to holistically overcome it, not just to strictly talk about the past and get hyper emotional about it, but to say, okay, this happened. Now what? How can we work through this? So imagine whatever we feel in our chest that is holding us back or holding us down, what if we can eliminate and get rid of that and just feel more free and show it better for others? So I love seeing when people start thriving in other areas of their life, where he's not just crushing sales, but now he has a thriving, loving relationship. He's more present with his kids. He's not thinking about his click funnel or his clickbait and his ads while he's with families. So he's just more free, present, and confident.
I love that, man. I think there's something to be said about that. I mean, in my entrepreneurship journey and just life itself with having kids and, all the craziness of everything, there's this process that there's some mental blocks. I remember even in the Bible, it talks about the transformation starts in the mind,
Yes.
right? And I think there's something to be said about it. I think a lot is going around right now in the self-development world of like, there has to be mental growth before growth can happen in your life and career. And it's like you're talking about, there's an infection. I like that, those words there. There's an infected part about the delusion that we have of upbringing. And you've had a really wild upbringing too. You told me right before the show some context of stuff. Like, bring us back to that origin story of some of the things that you've had to be resilient and build that. And then the time that you were in the Army and now that you're helping serve people in some of these wild things. It first starts with, some mental problem things, but like once you kind of fix the physique and that dopamine hit, like you're going to start thriving even more in your business. But bring us back to the beginning stage of that. I think our audience
Yeah.
wants to know some context of your story.
Yeah, for sure. So my father was in the US Army for 20 plus years, and he's African American. He's a farm boy. So he had that work ethic in his blood. My mother's German, and she's a city girl. And both my parents grew up very poor, and they became hyper successful, but they were both the oldest sibling of all their brothers and sisters. And while their mothers were working, they had to take care of everyone when they started at 11 and 12. So they had to mature really quick. So since that was ingrained in them, all the physical, mental, emotional abuse and just traumas that they went through, they never really got the time to truly dive deep and work on that. So they strictly focus on career goals. And the older that they got, they realized that a lot of the stuff that they were suppressing or kind of ignoring, they started to come out in family dynamics. So it never affected their career. They were always the first one to show up, the last one to leave. But once they had me, I'm the youngest. I became that physical, emotional, verbal punching bag per se. But I would realize that when it started to happen, I was 11 years old. So by 14, I learned so much about why they react a certain way. Why are they drinking more? So the first year when that happens to a child, they're thinking, what is wrong with me? They're scared, they're fearful. And a couple years of this happening, I learned their patterns and say, you know what? They never drink in the daytime. It never affects their career or their relationships. But when the doors close of our home after the cookout, that's when they release at night. And I would see that there's something that they weren't able to overcome. And so my father, he was always listening to Tony Robbins cassette tapes, Zig Ziglar, Les Brown, all the classics. And I would just hear all this stuff. And as you know, when your father gives you advice, you're like, yeah, yeah, cool, whatever. But once you hear that somebody else read the book, you're like, wait a minute, my father has all these books. So I started to grab them. And so by 12, 13 years old, I'm reading all this stuff because I just saw a lot of physical violence, death around me, because alcoholism and drugs run in both sides of the family. And so from the outside, we seem like this beautiful family. Big home in Florida, 4 bedrooms, 4 baths, swimming pool, screened in. Your parents are so awesome. Hey, I see them out. And I was just the quiet kid that would keep it to myself because I never wanted to bash their reputation or their professionalism. So I would just stay quiet about it. But growing up, I was that skinny kid. I was just the epitome of the kid that should be bullied. Skinny, insecure, bad posture, really timid, and all that. So years of the abuse happening at home and then getting bullied in school, I woke up one day and said, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm tired of giving up my power to people, whether it's family, whether it's somebody at school. And so I said, I need to change my physicality because I just was very insecure. So I grabbed every men's health magazine, Arnold's Bodybuilding Encyclopedia, stories about Bruce Lee, and I just absorbed and became obsessed with this kind of content. And then within about a year to 2 years, I had a total body transformation. And then I would start to raise my hand in class. I would get better at sports. I'd be the team leader. And people in school, they were like, who are you? You used to be this quiet kid in the back that was just very shy and timid. And now you're in the front, you're leading, you have a personality now. And I fell in love with helping others. So at the age of 15 in the state of Florida, I became a certified personal trainer. And now I've been training people for over 20 years. So I'm 35 now. And helping people with their body, with their mind was the gateway because I knew that's what I needed. So fitness was my step one into personal development. Because at that age period, around 14 to 15, I didn't have faith. I was that kid that was angry at God about everything. Why do bad things happen to good people? Why is my mom doing this when she's drunk? Why is my dad doing this? If God exists, why is he allowing this to happen to kids? Like I was just that angry teen, questions, questions, questions. I'd be in church asking questions and I would never have an answer. And so at the stillness of an intense workout late night after abuse and violence would happen at home, I would just work out in the garage. And every single time I started to notice when I'd wear my body and mind out, I would start to hear God and I would start to get chills. And I would just feel something internally and say, this is all part of how you're going to help others. And I started to believe more. And so at the age of 15 to 16, that's when things shifted in terms of faith. Because before that, I considered myself an atheist because I was just angry. Why is this happening to people? And nobody could give me an answer. And once I got over that and say, you know what? If the dark exists, the light has to exist. And then I think it was Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins. Things that really stood out to me was there's a light in your darkness and there's a gift in your pain. And I'd always run with that mentality. And so I became obsessed with learning people's comeback story, whether it was a movie like Rocky, whether it was a book, a musician. I loved their music and I could just relate to it. And I would just get immersed in this information and say, you know what? I had both parents. I always had food. We always had water. We always had everything. So there's zero reason for me to complain because people wish that they were in this position. So would flip it for gratitude. So with the upbringing, being that skinny bullied kid, then working on himself, getting some faith, I wanted to help other people with those things. And the older I got, the deeper I dove into mental health to help people that also have felt like that, whether it was in a dark place, questioning their life, questioning faith, help guide them and pull them out of that to show them that, hey, you can overcome these things. But the most important thing is that this happened for you, not to you, because we're all good at something. And it usually stems of what we lacked or something that happened to us or around us. And we're like, huh, the only reason he's good at this is because of that. The only reason she's amazing at that is because of these experiences. So I've always loved connecting the dots in people's stories.
What led you to being in the military then after all this?
Definitely seeing my father thrive in the military. And I have uncles that were also military. My father was Army, my uncles were Marines. And so it was just in our blood. And also internally, I wanted to face my fear of heights. So I did it selfishly because internally I was just scared of heights. And I said, I need to overcome this and overcome some other things. So I said, I need to join the Army, go through the obstacle courses, jump out of planes and helicopters, and being able to face those things and still being alive, I felt freer. And I said, you know what? I've faced the people, I've faced the heights, I faced other public speaking fears that I used to have when I was younger. And so it was just more so harnessing my potential because I realized the military would be a stepping stone that I needed to then do what I really wanted to do, which is help coach other people.
Yeah. And so you were in there for 4 years and then you got out, and then that's when you started becoming even more involved with people with this fitness journey, or has there been other back and forths with different careers?
I was in the Army for 10 years. So 5 was active duty, 5 was Army National Guard. And in the military, you have 2 jobs. You have your main career. So I did satellite communications. I was a tech nerd. So essentially, I'd be in the middle of nowhere with our laptop and satellites. And there's a lot of downtime. So on the downtime, I would just learn more about social media, about apps, digital marketing, and so forth. And I just saw that, hey, I'm building a community online and strangers on the internet are needing to hear or read these things. And I fell in love with that rush. And not in a sense of just going viral, but making that impact, getting that message. I needed to read that today. Hey, I don't know who you are. Your video came across my feed and that helped me. I just got a rush when I felt that because I knew what it felt like to not have any of this information. And so my other job in the US Army was US Army Master Fitness Trainer. So essentially getting soldiers mission ready, mentally and physically prepared, whether that's for deployments, training schools, transitioning out of the military. Let's just say they had a divorce, they go into a dark place. Another common thing that isn't discussed enough is injuries. After injuries, it's very common for some soldiers to have painkiller addictions because they're just prescribed the most intense things to speed up recovery. So there's a lot of things that we had to unpack, mental and physical, helping them reset. And so I fell in love with that, but I wanted to do it at scale, helping others. And so my experiences from my personal journey and then also in the military, nowadays I just connect those dots instead of just doing like a one size fits all modality. I just like to meet people where they're at and use different approaches depending on what they need in the present moment.
There's something to be said when someone's in a funk where they get like stuck somewhere, like pushing them toward like physical effort helps them in so many different ways. Why have you seen that, and what do you do to kind of help prime people and get them through that?
Great question. So, yeah, so somebody being able to see their potential, because until somebody's pushed past a pain threshold, whether that's physical, whether that's mental, then they see what they're capable of. And they're like, wait a minute, I ran one more mile, or she ran faster on her sprints, or work wise, they stayed and made 5 more calls, 5 more meetings. And they just get to that pinnacle where they used to quit and say, this is enough, or I'll do it next Monday. But once they start pushing through that, they tap into their potential. Like, wait a minute, I'm actually not that tired, or it's not as hard as I thought. And you can't replace that. So that's one of my favorite things to see is when that person has a rush about themselves because they simply did the work and pushed themselves out of their comfort zone. But definitely in those moments, that person is not thinking of stress, anxiety, depression, traumas. They're more so saying, what else can I do? And then they're riding this high. And those moments, that's when we're like, oh, she's in that zone. He's in that zone. And they're like, hey, I got my body right. What can I do in my career? What about this? And they start getting excited about the journey. But I truly believe that most people don't get to that point because they do not allow themselves to push out of that comfort zone. They have this safety net around them, or
Right.
I don't think this is good. Should I push that hard? And it's hard to know what you're capable of until you tapped out of that. So
Well, that's what I like about the military is it forces you for a stint of time to push beyond what you thought was your limits. And, and just look at it like the fitness transformation for people that you help serve that maybe wasn't in the military that didn't have that stint of time to kind of push them. It's like you're that now person that's pushing them toward their greatness. Right. And there's something to be rewarding about it, but also sometimes frustrating when you see their potential more than they see it. And they have
yes.
to live into your belief of them, which is not always the easiest to kind of help coach people with. Like, talk about some of those sort of things. Do you encourage people to work out in the morning? So it's like eating the frog type of thing at the very beginning, where then they conduct the rest of their day in that dopamine hit? Or how do you go about your strategy with helping people through all this?
Yeah, great question. So I like to meet people where they're at. So I do recommend that people do start off their morning with the workout, have that high, that dopamine hit. The rest of the day is easier. But some that work night shift, some have kids, some have multiple pets. So everybody's situation is a little bit different. So instead of bringing it the drill sergeant energy, like wake your ass up, like don't make excuses. It doesn't work for everybody and it's not sustainable. So what I like to do, I flip it and we look at their complete schedule. And then we say, okay, when is the best time for you to just plug in your workout where you are right now? And a few weeks of this, then we can adjust. So if she wants to train earlier, then we start to adjust. If he wants to train later, but I just recommend them to choose the same time of day. So then at that point, after 2 weeks, their mind and body expect it. So I have
Mhm.
some clients, they love training at 6 o'clock. Me, I think that's the worst time because the gym is packed at 6 p.m. But they train after work and that is their decompression before they go home and they love it. And others are like me. We like to start off our morning with the workout. Some do it on their lunch break. But I just like to remind people of as long as you get it in, it's all that matters. But I do recommend to choose the same time of day because then you have that rhythm and routine and your mind and body expect it. And then at that point, they can look at early mornings. But number one, I do recommend early mornings. But if that doesn't necessarily work for them with where they are and they want to avoid burning out, I would choose what works right now that is sustainable. Do that for about a month and then make necessary adjustments. So, yeah, 100% plugging it in because I'd rather somebody be 3 weeks consistent than train at a different time every day.
Yeah.
And then they're not really catching traction or momentum.
Talk about like some of the eating part, like the diet and the meal, because I know, they talk about it's like the 80-20 thing with, people that are saying, hey, the abs are made in the kitchen. Talk
Yes.
about your strategy there with.
Yeah, great question. So I focus on the holistic approach. So essentially, let's just say that we're shopping in the grocery store. In the middle, that's all the processed junk. That's all the stuff that we crave, we feel that we need or want, and it's all taste, 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 and flavor. So shopping on the outside, the produce, fruits, vegetables, meats, fish, and I don't push a specific diet. I just push that people have more holistic foods, and also reminding themselves that the two biggest issues are dehydration and mineral deficiency. Dehydration and mineral deficiency that causes most physical and mental health issues because they're not able to like function at their optimal level. So a lot of times people think macros, 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 which are the proteins, carbs, and fats. And sounds great, but it all depends on what they're actually eating. So I recommend that people mainly drink spring water. And also, I recommend having 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salts that same morning. And they'll notice throughout the day their electrolytes, their blood sugar, everything will feel more balanced. And then on top of that is their meals, just aiming for more holistic foods and things that they enjoy. So let's just say he loves ground beef. Let's say that she loves avocados and some good salads. If they don't eat meat, they can have chickpeas. There's a lot of vegetables that also have the protein in it, but approaching it from a holistic standpoint, but making sure we're getting the bases of hydration and minerals, and they'll notice how much better they feel and how fast. Like literally, if somebody drinks spring water, they can choose their brand. I'm not affiliated with anybody, but just spring water. And if they start adding 1 teaspoon of pink Himalayan salt, they'll notice that their performance is up. They'll feel more stable. And then from there, just slowly start tracking and building their food with more holistic meals.
Interesting. What do you think about like grains and sugars?
Sugars, it all depends on what the source is. So I say that if somebody does have sugar in their food, I would rather it be cane sugar because it is all natural. But as you know, in America, sugar is a huge addiction in America. So if somebody does have an issue with sugar and their cravings, one simple tip that they can use is, let's say that they have sugar cravings at night. They're watching Netflix with their loved ones and they're just like, I need something. If they have a bowl of grapes in their freezer, so essentially buying green grapes, whatever grapes they like, pull them off the stem, put them in a bowl, put the top on, leave that bowl of grapes in the freezer. The night that they crave sweets, if they grab that bowl of grapes and eat a couple handfuls, they get the mental fixation because the natural sugars in the grape coagulate. So the grapes taste 5 times sweeter. And the brain is like, the hell am I eating? Is this candy? Is this ice cream? Is this a little chew? So
That's a good one.
and
Yeah.
like you question it and it's just a grape and you added nothing to it. But that's one little flip is that sometimes just us having the dopamine hit from a better food source still makes us feel the same. So once they've had 1 or 2 handfuls of grapes, then wait 5 minutes and see if that craving is still there. And usually it's subsided or it's gone. And then they start laughing. They're like, huh. So the candy, the cake didn't really have control of me. It was the mental fixation of said feeling and the rush of the sugar. But that's one thing that somebody could try. They could bring it to work. But if somebody feels like they have a bad addiction to sugar, start with frozen fruits and go from there. And we're not saying that somebody has to totally cut out everything, but when they do want to enjoy their sweets, let's just say cheesecake, they have it on a Saturday a few weeks later. And then their relationship with cheesecake is not good or bad. It's just, hey, you know what? It's been a while. I've been working hard, but this thing doesn't control me anymore. I can still enjoy it at the birthday dinner and not be in my head that night or the next day.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that because I know there's a lot of fitness trainers that are like, you just got to be 100% compliant 100% of the time. But it sometimes it's not always realistic, especially with like kids or you have like celebrations. It's like there's like times that you're like, you'd be like a monk. And sometimes it's like, it's the hoorah of like, hey, I'm the guy that could just do compliance all the time and but never enjoy life. Or it's like, how do you, what's your take? What's the balance there that you've seen that's best results there?
Great question. So, what I recommend is 3 things. So, let's just say it's a holiday or it's a birthday and they want to enjoy it, but they don't want to be that person that's like, could I just get some chicken or rice? Could I get another Caesar salad? And everyone's like,
Right.
come on, we just cooked all this. So, some families, they find that disrespectful if you don't try their food. And
Yeah.
the person's like, I'm trying to lose 50 pounds, grandma. I can't eat this junk. But in that regard, is option one is completely fast until that family function. So only have water, completely fast until then. So your one meal or snack or dessert is only at that cookout. So they can still enjoy it. They didn't eat anything all day, but the next day they won't feel physically as bad and mentally because they're like, huh, I actually feel good. I'm not super bloated because they didn't have 3 other meals before the family function. So
Mm.
option one is completely fasting up until that day so they can still enjoy it and they're not sabotaging their results. Option two is strictly have protein, whether that's shakes, meats, just protein only all day up until the event. And they'll notice after a few pieces, after a few dishes, they realize, oh, I actually want less of this because I'm already full because I had protein throughout the day. So they still enjoyed less food at the event, but they still feel good. So option one, they enjoyed more food, but they fasted. And then option three is strictly have shakes or smoothies that day and then just have that meal. But if somebody can do that on their family functions, vacations, wedding night, things like that, you can still enjoy yourself. So I'm always totally transparent with my client. I tell them like, hey, my girlfriend and I, we enjoy the pizza sometimes. We enjoy this. And they're like, what? You ate a donut? I'm like, hell yeah. Once a month I'll have, I'll tear up a dozen, but then we'll hike the next morning and like just burn it off. And they're like, huh. And so I tell them, I don't want you to see food as good or bad. Just say, you know what? I can have these things in moderation, but first let me make sure that 80% of the time I have control. And then they never really are pulled by their cravings, whether it's carbs, sugar, or another addiction is the caffeine, where most people they can't go a day without having coffee, Red Bull, Ghost, pre-workout, whatever it
Right.
is.
Let me ask you and just kind of shift gears here toward your online presence and how you're building a following. Talk to us a little bit about your strategy of like how you're getting clients right now.
Great question. So a huge thing is telling your story of things that you've been through and overcame. And I do just want to preface to people that you don't have to have a crazy dark upbringing. Because a lot of times people are like, man, I read David Goggins' story, or I read Andy Frisella's story, or Mel Robbins. I don't relate to her. And they just went through all these trials and tribulations. They're like, I'm just normal Michelle, normal Joe. And that's actually awesome because there's more people that relate to you all than these crazy stories. So teaching people, what did you do to overcome these things? And just being transparent. Because a lot of times people, they play a character for social media and people can feel it. So I truly believe that now in 2025, moving forward, the influencer is out of the window and it's all the authentic people
Yeah, I
that don't
agree.
have a link tree with 17 links to 16 products and codes and all that. It's just the person that is just authentically themselves, where essentially whoever's watching the individual's content are like, huh, I feel like I know Nathan. I feel like I know Michelle. She's got a pit bull. She likes steak. She hates Dunkin' Donuts. Yesterday she was bloated. I was bloated, like just all these things because the person is totally open. They're like, wow, they struggled too, where they don't see this person as like the perfect character. Like, man, Nathan's crushing it in sales and his team. He's probably always been that way. But once they learn your journey, you're like, wait a minute, he went through that. I never would have guessed. And so just the transparency. And also from a psychology standpoint, it's very freeing when people are just open about everything because they don't have to feel like they have to show up with their final version or their best version of themselves. And they can say, hey, here's my current state, but we're going to get through these things. Here's what I'm working on. If you'd like to join us. And they're like, wow, this guy's just like open about his struggle or what he did go through. But
Do you
I
share
definitely
that
recommend.
both in like your story on just the stories, or do you do that like advice and reels, or do you have a YouTube channel too that you kind of share some of that stuff? Like, how do you go about, you know, doing
Yes.
your strategy online?
Yeah, for sure. So I focus on the three E's. So the acronym EEE, cycling through educate, entertain, and empower. Educate, entertain, and empower. So essentially, we never want to get too caught up in one of those because then we're predictable. We're like, oh, this guy's talking about discipline again. Look at Derick talking about trauma, trauma, trauma. But if I drop in my girlfriend, drop in the pit bull, or if I talk about, hey, yesterday I was bloated as hell and blah, 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 and talking about real things, like when was the last time y'all sat on the toilet for an hour because you had a bad cheat meal? And people are like, oh my God, I relate to that. And just being open about real stuff, then people are like, wow, I feel like I know this guy, but cycling between those so we're not predictable. And also, we don't burn out just making the content. So if somebody has pets or kids, sharing a story about them, things like that, and not just trying to show up with the perfect reel that's edited, that's awesome. But definitely having some that are on the fly. He's driving, he just has a thought on the drive home. Like a video that crushed a few years ago, I was just ranting in traffic and I just posted it. I was like, whatever. And I posted it and I got so many messages. People like, oh my God, I hate Tesla drivers too. They can't drive with it. Like it was just a rant that Tesla drivers can't drive. I have nothing against Tesla, but in South Florida, they cause the most wrecks. And so I was just ranting about people can't drive. And so many people like, dude, I relate to the same thing. So it's like,
That's
yes, we can be professional, but we've all been pissed off in traffic before. So just talk about that.
that's awesome, man. Where can people follow you more, Derek? Where can they find you and connect with you?
Appreciate it. They can find me on social media at Fit with Derick 2, or they can just search my name, Derick Johnson. And my whole intent with social media is just to plant seeds. So if somebody's struggling, dealing with narcissistic coworker, dealing with excuses, they're going to find a lot of information that they can actually apply to their life. And just as a whole is just to build a positive community to show people like, hey, your current situation doesn't have to be forever. Life is too short to be miserable. Let's go ahead and get through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Go follow Derick online. I'll put the links down below. Derick, I appreciate you being on the podcast today,
Thanks for
sharing the
having me.
insights of your story and all the life coaching things that you do with all your clients, and then help them get them shredded is always good.
Awesome.
So
Thanks for having me, Nathan.
yeah, man. And if you're still listening, make sure to go check out that workshop down below as well. That's going to help you guys grow an online brand just like me and Derick have. Those things are going to be really helpful for you guys. And we will see you on the next episode.